Okay, first things first. What I want to do today is create a short tutorial on using layer masks in Photoshop, and we're going to be working with 3 exposures of the same photograph. Now these were shot with a Canon 7D on a tripod, so what's in the frame is exactly the same on each photograph, except the exposure setting is different. We've got a -2, a +2, and a 0. -2 just means it's 2 stops below an even exposure, +2 is 2 stops above an even exposure, and 0 is the even exposure. So the first thing we do, I've got these photos here at Bridge, and there's a ton of photos here, but I have this one, and this one selected. So since those are selected, we go up here to the tools bar and the drop down, and then we see Photoshop. Go over to the Photoshop drop down, and we're going to go to load files into Photoshop layers. Okay, so I have my layers window set up over here on the bottom right. You can move that around if you want to turn it on. You go over here to window, and then there's this layers. You can also turn it on with the F7 key, turn it on and off with F7. I leave mine on all the time because I'm using layers pretty much every photograph that I shoot, including single exposures. So this loaded our top layer in as the -2 exposure. I'm going to move it down. The way you move it down, you just click on a layer. You left click on it, and then you hold it down, and you just grab it and move it. So I'm going to put the even exposure on top. I really like the sky and the even exposure, but I'm getting quite a bit of dark tones because when I focus this photograph and the way I've got my metering set up on my camera, I focused on a mountain range in this area so that the sky would be evenly exposed. So my focus point was right here on the edge of one of these mountains. So what we're going to do, we're going to use a layer mask to reveal the layer beneath it. The way to do that, make sure you have your top layer selected, or the layer that you're going to be working in a layer mask in. You want to use the top layer because that's what you're seeing here. So down here at the bottom of the layers window is a set of tools, and then the third one from the left is add layer mask. It's a little white square with a gray circle in the middle, and that will add a little white layer mask beside the layer that you're working with. Now what this layer mask allows us to do, it allows us to paint or to reveal with the paintbrush the layer below. And to see the layer below, if you want to see what is below it without moving the layers around, there's a little eyeball right here. You just click on it, and that shows you what's next in line down the layers panel there. So we'll turn that back on. Now when we look at the one below, I really like the tones on the tractor. I like the tones in the grass a lot more than I do on the original. The mountain ranges themselves, we're going to leave them pretty dark, not super dark, but pretty dark, because we want to make sure that this final photograph has depth, so that you know what's in front of you in the foreground is nice and bright, and as you move further into the photos, you've got more shadow tones as you go, and this will create a sense of depth when someone is looking at the photograph. So we've got our layer mask added here. We want to paint in some of this brightness that's below it. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the brush tool. It's already selected over here. That's the brush tool. And to the hotkey on your keyboard, or the quick select, is you just hit the B. The B as in boy on the keyboard. And then on your brush tool, there's several ways to make it larger and smaller, or 2 ways basically. There's a little drop down here when you've got the brush selected, and it's got the size, and you can move this slider up and down, and that'll make it bigger or smaller. You see when I move the brush is bigger and move it down, excuse me, the brush is smaller. So what I usually do, however, is I use the the bracket keys, which bracket keys on your keyboard are the keys right beside the P as in potato. The left bracket key makes it smaller, the right bracket key makes it larger, and you can just tap it or hold it down. When you hold it down, it bigger faster. When you just tap it or hold it down. So since we're working with a white layer mask and we want to paint in the layer that's below, which is this brighter layer you see here, we're going to use the color we're going to use is going to be black. Now we're going to use the opacity slider here, and I usually start around 20 to 30%. And what that does, that'll paint in 30% of everything that we touch with the brush. We'll paint in 30% of the layer below on top of this layer that we're seeing. So we'll just go in here and we're going to basically paint every area in to pull in some brighter tones. And we're not going to work with the mountain range. We're going to go on everything below the mountain range here, and then make sure we get all of those little areas in. Should have used a bigger brush, but that's okay. Oh, went too far. So you see on this layer mask, kind of hard to see, but you'll see some gray painted in. That's just because you're using black, and 30% of that black is that color gray. And what that did was reveal 30% of this layer below. So you noticed I went over that mountain a little bit there. What we'll do, we'll take our opacity back up to 100%. Then we'll switch our colors to white for the paintbrush. And the way to do that when you're working with layer mask, you just hit the X key on the keyboard, and then you can just paint it right back in, and that paints 100% white back over top of what you already painted. So you notice we've got areas in this photograph that overlap, like this. The exhaust on this tractor sticks up in front of the mountain range. What we're going to do, we're going to switch back to black. We're going to take this back slider, and then we're going to on the exhaust, all the area that we missed here. I'm going to go in, just painting this back in. We're bringing up the tones a little bit, and just be careful not to go over the edge, because it'll create a halo area that'll look unnatural. And then there are places on the fence here, you know, where we missed it because it's even with the mountain range. And you can go in and fix all this stuff if you want to. Deciding what to fix is, that's a stylistic choice. In this case, where this stuff is really close to the front, I'm going to go ahead and work on that a little bit, because it will show up. Right here actually looks okay, tonality. Not a lot of difference. It's quite a bit actually. So we'll go ahead and paint that in that area. And then we got a little dark spot here. Not really a huge deal. I notice it. Most people wouldn't notice it. Dark area there. Fix that. A little bit of dark spot on the top of that one. And that looks pretty good. So I'm actually going to bring the brightness in quite a bit more on the tractor itself. The grass is a little bit flat, but we can fix some of that with contrast using and dodging and burning the highlights and shadows in that area later on. So I'm going to leave that as is, but I'm just going to leave my opacity at 30%. And again, we're still on the black. I'm going to paint in on the tractor to bring in some more brightness, because I really want, this old tractor is really the main subject of this photograph. We want to see this, with that mountain range in the background. So I'm just going to paint over the blue areas. We've got some pretty bright highlights here, not super bright, but they're bright enough on the wheels and the gray there. And then of course this tractor's wet, so we're getting nice highlights on the top of it. But I really want that blue to stand out, so I've already done another 30%, and then I'm going to do it again. See what it looks like here. Just pull some of that brightness back in over this area of the tractor. Okay. So we've got a tractor that really stands out quite a bit there, and that what we've done, we've just painted in on the area below. So once we sort of get in the area we want to be with that first layer mask, the way you merge it into the next one, I don't really want to change anything else on this top layer right now, so we're just going to merge that down. And the way to do that, you right click on the layer and then merge down. Now if you merge visible, it's going to merge all of them, or flatten image, it's going to flatten everything. So we just want to merge down, and then we only have 2 layers left. We've got the dark layer, and then we've got you know, the layer that we just created. So and the way to compare them, you know, you can look at the darks. I kind of like the darkness. We've got some blown out clouds on our top layer here. They're a little bit blown out up there in the highlights. And I kind of like the darkness of that this cloud here. So we're going to pull some of that in, doing the same thing. We're going to stick around 30%. Now you can mess with this opacity slider all you want to. Just know if you're working in the higher ranges, you're going to get more dramatic changes when you're painting in. So I'm just going to paint some of that. It's a little too much at 30%. So let's take it down to, we'll say 10%. Yeah, we'll just paint in a little bit of that darkness on that particular cloud, give it a more of a sort of stormy look. And then we're going to go in here on this area here, zoom in real close, make our get rid of some of those aggressive highlights in that cloud. It's not too bad there in the middle, but then again on the far left here it's pretty aggressive. So we move those down quite a bit, and we get a little more detail. And just remember that when you're moving the exposure down, you're going to pull some more detail in, especially through any shadow lines, that sort of thing. So that's pretty much the only thing I wanted to fix in that area. We'll work with the shadows and highlights with a dodge and burn tool later in a different tutorial. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now we'll just go ahead and merge visible, and then we've got some areas. I know this isn't part of this tutorial, but this looks like these are clouds, but you know, when you look at the whole photo, it almost looks like a dust spot on the lens. So I'm going to go ahead and fix those as if there were dust spots instead of clouds, because it just looks a little unnatural. I know that's what it actually looked like when I took the photo, but you know, some people looking at that say, man, you got some dust on your camera. So we go to the spot healing brush tool, and it looks like yeah, so we're just going to go, I've got mine set up so that it does content aware. If you're familiar with CS6, content aware basically samples the area around the image, and will replace everywhere you paint with with the sampling, and it just makes that little spot disappear. So we're going to get rid of these dark spots here, because it just looks like a dirty lens to me. So it's doing a pretty good job. Now your spot healing brush is not always perfect, and content aware isn't always perfect. So, and I didn't do it on this one, but what I recommend when you're working with that, if you hit the Control J, and that's on a Windows machine, if you hit Control J, it's going to create a copy of the layer, you know, the background layer or whatever layer you have selected. So if you work in Control J, you know, you can make edits, and then if it screws up really bad, you can just trash the layer and make another copy and work on that layer. But let's get rid of these two. I'm not real fond of those areas. Okay, now that's the photograph we're working with. Now this whole photograph is still a little bit dark, and I know we're pushing on 15 minutes on this tutorial, but I want to go ahead and show you how to fix that area using layer masks, or the whole photograph. So I still feel like the vast majority of this photograph is dark. The sky is just right. The tractor, pretty good. You know, maybe a little bit brighter. It just depends on, you know, what you like. So there are other ways to work with adjustment layers. And down here you see there's a button right beside the layer mask button, and this button is create new fill or adjustment layer. So you're going to click on that. And one of the ways to work with your brightness here is a levels layer. Now when you create a levels layer, it brings up here in this window up here, it's going to bring in your levels tool, which, you know, it's got a little slider. You can make it brighter and darker. We'll just set that back where it was, and it automatically creates a layer mask for you on this. So what we're going to do, we're just going to look at the areas of the photograph that we want to make brighter, which is pretty much everything except for the tractor and the sky. So we're just going to pull that up, and this is your midtone slider, the one in the middle. So we're going to pull it up. I kind of like that level of brightness there. Now this is your white point over here. We're going to pull it up too to bring in some highlights, white pointer highlights. And we're going to pull the little slider on the left back into the right a little bit. That's a little too much. That's your black points. So we're basically changing the white point, black point, and midtones of this photograph to make it a little brighter. If you want to see the original, you see the original there. This is what I've done to it. Now I don't like what it did to the sky. I really don't like what it does to the shadows in that area down there. We turn it on, but we've already got a layer mask, so we're just going to go in and we're going to paint the sky back out of there. And the way we do that, select our brush tool, make the brush a little bit bigger. We're just going to go in, and you can use 100% because that was only a slight change, and just paint that back in. And there you go. It brings the sky back in, and we'll zoom down here, and then we'll just bring those shadows back down. And that's that. And of course, merge down to get that layer in. And of course, this photograph I think really lacks some contrast. So we're going to do another adjustment layer, and you see brightness and contrast here. So this pulls up a little brightness and contrast window, and you can just use this slider to pull some contrast in. And you can pull contrast in and then pull the brightness back up, because contrast is going to make the whole area, the whole photo, a little bit darker. So if you pull your contrast up this high, it's going to create quite a bit. You pull it up all the way, that's a crazy amount. But you pull it up into the 40 and 50 range, it creates quite a bit of contrast. And then if you leave your brightness on 0, you see that changed the entire photograph. It changed the levels. It made it a lot darker. So we can bring the brightness in, bring the brightness back that we had before, and just look at your bottom layer to see where it was at. See that? Now what this brightness and contrast has done for us, now you see we got some dull greens here, dull green there. It's really dull back here, and then this whole area right here is dull. So when we turn that back on, what you'll notice is the highlights really sort of pop out here, and the shadows pop out. And I really like to make the contrast between the highlights and the shadows pop. It just makes a more dramatic photograph. And of course, we've blown out the sky with the brightness on the adjustment layer. So again, when you create an adjustment layer, it automatically creates a layer mask for you. So we're just going to go back in, and we're gonna brush the sky back in the way it was. Now we've got a substantially more dramatic change in these layers, so you want to be careful not to paint over the edges of those ridges too much, because you're gonna, it's just gonna not look so hot. Okay, that's that. We'll go ahead and merge those down, and then another tool I like to use is the last tool we'll do on this tutorial. Is the burn tool, dodge and burn, which if any of you film photographers out there are gonna know what dodge and burn is in the darkroom. But digitally, this just mimics what dodge and burn would have done in the darkroom. And so I want to add more contrast to specific areas of this photograph. I don't want the whole photograph to have more contrast. I just want specific areas. So this, when you go over here, your burn tool, which it looks like to select it is you hit the O button, or you can just hit this little hand, and if you hold it down, you'll see dodge tool here, burn tool there, and sponge tool there. So burning, it gives you a range and exposure amount up here at the top. And what burning does, whatever you've got selected in the range, let's select the shadows because that's what we're going to work on first. When you are burning, you are actually making something darker in the photograph. And if you got your exposure at 100%, let's go ahead and make an extra layer. If you got your exposure at 100%, it's going to make it super dark right there. That's pretty ugly. You don't want to do that. So let's take our exposure down to, say, 15. And then now when you're working with the burn tool, when you press the button, if you see it does something similar to what we did with with the paintbrush. However, every time you go over the same area again, it burns it again, even if you're only holding the button down one time. So when I take that out, you kind of want to work pretty quick. So I usually just go in sort of swaths across, and got an area there. Didn't really like what it did right there, so Control Z to undo that. Let's make it a little smaller, and we'll just go in there and do that. Kind of want to make this area right here a little darker. Yeah, do a little bit of editing through here. Make these areas kind of dark where they stand out against the tractor. Just makes that tractor pop a little bit more. We want to do that whole little stand right there. And then we got some areas in the mountain range back here that's a little too much. Take our exposure down. Okay, so that pulled some shadows in. Now we're going to go to the dodge tool, and we're going to go to highlights. We're going to make these highlights pop a little bit more. We're going to bring them up. Now we're going to lower that because this can be pretty dramatic. So I'm sitting at 8% on the highlights, and just bring the highlights in right here in the corn and the grass, and then back there a little bit. Yeah, that's. Now you don't really see a whole lot of drama going on here. It's making slight changes to the highlights and the contrast. We're making these highlights pop a little bit more. If we pull it in at 100% and you hit that, you can see, well, let me show you what it did here. See all those little areas on the leaves that are highlights, those little bright spots. See how they get brighter? Now I'm hitting Control Z to remove the edit we just did. It gets brighter. Now there aren't a lot of highlights there, and that's why you're not seeing a lot. If we did it up here, it's going to get way brighter. But here where there's few highlights, so we can actually take our exposure up to, say, let's go about 45%. I'm going to run right over top of those and make them pretty bright, because there's just a small amount of highlight there. Almost no highlights in this area here. So yeah, that makes it a little more dramatic. See what this is what we had before. That's what we got now. You can see we made some areas darker and some areas a little bit brighter. Those are just selective edits that we're doing there. Yeah. Merge down and then save your file. That's it. Thanks for watching.